All right, as we're getting into the gardening season, people are getting going, preparing, getting set. One thing I want to talk about today is compost. We talk about gardening, but we also talk about the soil. Everybody likes the word compost. I just want to talk about two things today that are annoying about compost. One, it takes time. In order to get to good quality compost, it's not frozen. Something like that. It's going to take a good year if you just let it going. You can turn it every day for 18 days and get it up with that Berkeley method, but that just takes time and effort. So if you just let it sit there, you let it go for a whole season, that means you can't use it for the next season. But today I want to talk to you about the yield. So that's something not many people talk about. So this is the soil that we see underneath this tarp is the result of everything that I did last year. And if you've seen any of the composting videos, I have both of these bins filled with leaves, and these bins are 8 by 8, 4 foot up. So these are pretty sizable bins. So those are filled with all leaves. So that was my browns. And as I made greens in the form of everything from the garden, as well as mowing the lawn, so that's a whole year, I would say, stacked up, I would probably have filled these things 5 to 6 bins full easily. But at the time, that stuff I'm putting into it is fluffy. It's filled with water, hasn't broken down yet. As it gets into the breaking down stage, obviously you're going to lose a lot of that mass associated with it. But most people don't understand how much of that mass you're actually going to do. So in my case, given how many beds I have, I probably need at least 4 of these bins filled with soil. So as I'm making my compost, I have to think about how much of stuff do I have to fit in there in order to fill my bins, which are ultimately going to fill my beds. If you're starting out, you're going to need more. Once you get your beds going, you don't need as much. 2 or 3 inches on top is going to be plenty enough. So in that case, 4 should be okay for me. It might be a little light, but in order for me to make 4 out of this sort of setup, I'm simply not going to make it. So of the amount of material that you're going to put into this bins, I would say you're probably going to get back 20 to 25% of potential compost. You're going to lose, I would say, 75% into the air, moisture, the breakdown, everything going into that. And I would say even looking at the tarp now, you're probably maybe at a half a bin. This is not fully compostable yet. There's still a lot of stuff that is not decomposed yet. I don't like my compost fully decomposed because I still want to have some food essentially for the microbes when I put it into my actual beds. I'll filter it a little to get rid of sticks and rocks and that, but for the most part, I'm gonna leave it as that. So if I were to leave this for the rest in order to be fully composted, you might lose another half going onto this. So as you are composting and you're throwing stuff into bins, I see people use the kitchen stuff. So you can throw your kitchen scraps into there and you're going to save the earth with that. That's great. But you're really not going to form any compost because the amount that you get back is so little to your input, because the majority of what you put into that is water and not much you're going to get out of that. So when you're planning on making your own compost, you really have to take into account what you get out of this versus what you're actually going to put into your compost. And you'll see the people that are the large players into this are just getting compost delivered to them because of the hassle doing this. So I like doing the compost by myself because I know what's going into that and I'm trying to be self-sufficient. It is very labor intensive. So as I was putting everything into here and I was throwing leaves over, and every time I mowed the lawn, I flipped the whole beds. It's a good hour or 2 of labor every 2 weeks to keep flipping this bed. So even me flipping this as routinely as I could, I still wasn't at the end fully compostable stage yet. So it is a lot of time and effort, and what you get back is not what you're going to get. What I would believe what most people are thinking is a lot of compost back. You're going to get 25% of what you put into there. It is good, rich stuff, but there's a lot of time and effort that go into that. So when you're thinking about compost, take that into account. Not only we all understand the time aspect because nature is going to take a little bit longer, but what you get out, the yield out of it, is going to be significantly less than you anticipate. And you're going to want to take that into account when you're setting up your compost bins.